Welcome to this madness on the board behind me. So, this is what I've spent the last about half an hour filling out. This is the entire Blackhawks schedule from the 2022-23 year, and what we're going to be looking at is it's the third video of the day, so excuse me if I'm a bit cranky. I'm just trying to get all these over with because it's a busy day ahead of me after this morning. So the Hawks finished 26-49-7, and this is the entire record, every score, every game they played this year, all 82. And some of the games you'll see have like marks like this, which would mean they were losing and they probably should have lost that game. They were losing big time. A dash means it was an OT win, which will take away we'll see what happens when you take away every game that they win in overtime, because they get valuable points that they could have used to get below Anaheim and Columbus. This is all like last year we were looking at what record they could have had and how good they should have been. Meanwhile, this year, because like last year, it came close to 500 when it all canceled out. This year, we're trying to see how bad they could have been and how close they could have been to Bedard. At least getting the number one odds, because I'm obsessed with this at this point. And we have another mark. It's going to be harder to see, but I put a dot like right here next to Buffalo. That was a game that we probably should have won. We were winning big time, and we probably should have won. So I put three. We have the record that they finished with 26-49-7. Then we have three records here. We have one with overtime wins, and they shouldn't have won. So that's like there is overtime wins included, so essentially just like it's just games they should have lost were all in there. And then the next one I have is record with no overtime wins. So all the times that they didn't win, like let's say we take away the overtime wins out of the win total. That's the record I have next under that. And then we have one more under that. It's the record with every game they should have won. So that would be their best record out of that, because there's a bunch of games in here that they probably should have won as well. We'll start at the top. We'll go through game 1 through 82. Colorado, they lose 5-2 in Game 1 in Colorado. Against Vegas, they lose 1-0. Against San Jose, they win 5-2 after being down 2-0. That's why I put that mark there. They win against Detroit at home for the home opener, 4-3 in overtime, and they also were down 2-0. So I put another mark. Against Seattle, they win 5-4 to start the season. They had a good start to the year, but they were also down 2-0, so that's three games right there that they should have just been dead to rot, and they didn't. And then they finally win their first legit game, the one they played well in. They win 4-2 against Florida. Then they lose 6-5 against Edmonton, and I debated saying if they should have won this, but I decided not to. Buffalo, a game they should have won, they lose 4-3 in overtime. They lose 4-3 in a shootout to Minnesota. They lose 3-1 to the Islanders. They win in overtime 2-1 to the Kings. That's what that dash is for. They lose 4-0 to Winnipeg. They would get smacked by Winnipeg, you'll see as you look at this board. We'll also go into another video I'll do later on, possibly during the playoffs, about their record against every team, because I like looking at that and seeing which teams they performed well against this season. They win 3-2 against Anaheim when they were down 2-0 as well. They screwed themselves so badly here. The Hurricanes, they lose 3-0. That's game 16 on the season, or 15, I don't remember. But now we go up to St. Louis up there. They lose 5-2. They lose 6-1 to Boston. They lose 5-3 to Pittsburgh. They lose 6-4 to Dallas. After being up, I think it was 4-1 going into the third. They were up 4-1 with like 15 minutes to go in the third. That's a game they should have won. Then they lose to Montreal 3-2 in a shootout. That's the one where Doc put his ear to the crowd. Winnipeg, they lose 7-2. Edmonton, they lose 5-4. Rangers, they win 5-2. Islanders, they lose 3-0. Devils, they lose 3-0. Winnipeg, they lose 3-1. Capitals, they lose 7-3. Vegas, they lose 4-1. Minnesota, they lose 4-1. Rangers, they lose 7-1. Predators, they lose 4-2. That's what this year should have been about. Just a loss. Columbus, they win 5-2. That would have helped if they lost that game. Carolina, they lose 3-0 for the second time. Carolina matches up right here, and then St. Louis matches back up again up there. They lose 3-1 to St. Louis. They lose 4-1 to Columbus. Good. They lose 5-2 to San Jose in a game they should have won. They were up 2-0 in that one. They did the reverse of what San Jose did to them back in Game 3. They lose 4-1 to Tampa. They win 2-0 against Arizona for their first shutout of the season. They win in overtime against Calgary 4-3 in OT. They played their best hockey against Calgary this year, I swear. Colorado, they win 3-2. Seattle, they lose 8-5, and when they were down 6-1, it was impressive that they made it 8-5. Buffalo, they win in overtime 4-3. They shouldn't have won that game. They were down late, and they also win in overtime, so they get that dash. So because some of these have multiple, sometimes some of them will have a dot and a dash. Some of them will have a dash and a star. Some of them will have a star and a. Actually, no, that they shouldn't have that. But actually, there is one. There is a dot and a one right there. So it makes more sense if you can like picture it in your head. They beat Philadelphia 4-1. They beat St. Louis 5-3. They lose to the Kings 2-1. They lose to Vancouver 5-2. They beat Calgary 5-1. They lose to Edmonton 7-3. They lose to Anaheim in overtime 3-2. They beat Arizona in overtime 4-3, which is a game that they were down. You can guess it, 2-0, and they ended up winning in overtime. Winnipeg, they lose 4-1, because that's all they do is lose to Winnipeg this year. Montreal, they lose 4-0. They lose to Toronto 5-2. They win in an overtime over Ottawa when they were down 3-1 going into the third. So that's why they have the star. That's a game they should have lost. Against Toronto at home, they win 5-3. They beat Vegas in a shootout 3-2. They beat Dallas 4-3. And there's a star there because going into the third period, Dallas was up, or late in the second period, Dallas was up 3-0 on them. And then the game just switched. That was a weird game. Then they beat San Jose in a shootout 4-3, so they're in a 5-game win streak here. And they somehow lose it to Anaheim. They lose 4-2 to Anaheim. They lose 4-1 to Arizona. They lose 5-2 to Dallas. They lose 3-1 to Nashville. They beat Ottawa 5-0 in their biggest win of the season. They lose to Detroit 4-3, and that was a game they should have won. They lose to Florida 4-3, which they were down. And then they ended up taking the lead, and they should have won. But then in overtime, they lose it, so that's a confusing one. Tampa, they lose 3-1. Boston, they win 6-3 against the number one team in the NHL. Just think, they gave one of the 12 regulation losses that Boston had this season. The Chicago Blackhawks did that. Nashville wins 5. They win 2-1. They win 2-1. Geez. Arizona, they lose 4-2. Colorado, they lose 5-0. So they get that retribution from after beating Ottawa 5-0. Washington, they lose 6-1. Minnesota, they lose 3-1. Vancouver, they lose 4-2. Dallas, they lose 4-1. And we're going into a groove here near the end of the year. It's like lose. We want number one odds. We want number one odds. Lose against Dallas 4-1. Lose against St. Louis 5-3. Lose against New Jersey 6-3. And then they beat Calgary 4-3. Curb stop. It's like when your car runs over a curb. That's how it felt. Vancouver They play Vancouver. They lose 3-0. They lose 7-3 to Seattle. 4-2 to Minnesota. They beat Pittsburgh 5-2, which kills it, and then they kills it even more when a game they should have lost. They were down 2-0 and 4-2 to Philadelphia yesterday. They lose 5-4 in overtime. So we'll go to the records. So now that I've gone over every score that's happened this year, all 82 games, I wonder if there's like a thing I can do to like look at what the most common score was, because like there's only 1-0 on the board. I know right there, but like 5-2s. Because I see 1, 2, 3, 5-2s right there. That's something I might look at afterward just for fun. I won't do it on the video, but so yeah. So the record with OT wins, but along with games they should not have won, their record would have been 18-59-5, which is 10 more losses, 2 less overtime losses, and 8 less wins. They would have had 41 points, by far the worst team in the salary cap era. With no OT wins, they would have been 14-59-9. 37 points. The Hawks had a great chance this year to just absolutely be one of the worst teams in history, and they managed to blow that. And then the record with should have wons. This is the good one out of all these. 23-56-3 for 49 points. The Hawks exceeded expectations this year by having 26 wins. They should not have had that many wins. They played worse than that, and unfortunately, it cost them. It cost them big time. If they end up winning the lottery by some means, some phantom way, all of this means nothing. I've said this before. But unless it happens, they blew it. But, yeah, it's really going to be all I have for you guys today. Now I'm just kind of looking up the scores. I'm looking at, I see a lot of 4-3s and 3-2s. A lot of 3-0s on here, to be fair. 4-2s. That's something I'll go into probably afterward just for fun. So I want to thank you guys so much for watching, and I shall see you guys in the next one. Goodbye.